The employer of mine told me in a direct manner, "Jake, after 17 years, we are eliminating your position. Before the end of the day, clean up your desk. Jake Wilson is my name, and I am 54 years old." Prior to that Monday morning, I worked as a senior systems analyst at Meridian Technologies, which is located in Columbus, Ohio. I had been the backbone of the information technology department for almost 20 years, from the days of dial-up through the migration to the cloud. I remained in my position, training every new employee, recovering every lost file, and working through weekends and holidays without requesting a promotion or a pat on the back. 3 CEOs had come and gone while I remained in my position. In light of this, I was aware of the situation even before Daniel opened his mouth when he called me into his office, and Vanessa from HR was already there. The atmosphere had shifted a few weeks ago. When I said it, I nodded once and replied, "I agree completely." Without uttering a single word, I left the room. Just a simple acknowledgement, without any rage or pleading on your part. As I looked back at my desk, I noticed that younger workers gave me a short glance before swiftly turning their attention to their displays. The news spreads quickly. The vast majority of them were coders that I had taught myself. Despite the fact that they were good students, they were completely unaware of what was actually incorporated into our systems or how the older architecture functioned. Without exception, none of them were able to navigate the bespoke software that I had developed or the administrative credentials that were buried 3 layers deep in each system. I started packing my personal belongings in a methodical manner, a photograph of the family. I made this coffee mug when my kid was in high school. A little cactus that managed to thrive for 17 years while being exposed to fluorescent illumination. With a worried expression on her face, Bethany, who works in marketing, came to visit. "Jake, I just got the news. This is completely absurd. Almost entirely, you constructed this location." I gave a shrug. Companies shift their course of action. Still, without any prior warning? With everything that you've accomplished? Her voice was getting louder, which drew their attention. "Don't worry about it," I whispered. "Is that true?" It was not all right, but I wasn't going to cause a commotion over it. During the time when I was leaving, Daniel emerged from his office to observe my departure. Not even a handshake or a farewell. Nothing more than monitoring to ensure that I had actually left. The fact that I had become the most important person in the entire building was something that none of them had bothered to pay attention to throughout the course of the intervening years. I was thorough. Not because I was outstanding, but because I looked into everything. I wrote down every single detail. In response to a request from the legal team during a previous incident, security audit processes were established many years ago in order to monitor unauthorized access. I, too, had copies of it. While I was sitting in my car, I took a brief moment to reflect on the 12-story building that had been my home for the majority of my adult life. A total of 16 times had been renewed for the security badge that I had just handed over. After starting the engine, I drove back to my house. To their surprise, Wednesday turned out to be a pleasant day. In the beginning, when Meridian was only 2 floors in a business park, I had been working there. When my daughter Olivia was in kindergarten, I launched this endeavor. She was nearing the end of her graduate studies. As the company expanded, I expanded along with it. I chose not to accept offers from rival companies because I placed a high value on loyalty. There was a time when my wife Andrea would joke that the servers were like a second family to me. To a certain extent, she was correct. Every system, every workaround, and every backdoor solution to problems that the executives were not even aware of was something that I was familiar with. The infrastructure that I had constructed had endured 3 previous acquisitions, as well as innumerable innovations that management had first embraced but then abandoned some months later. It has been 5 years since Daniel became my supervisor, a young male with a master's degree who referred to our department's IT resources as people. The concepts of streamlining, efficiency, and digital transformation were among his ideas. These buzzwords typically meant accomplishing more with fewer resources. In the beginning, I made an effort to assist him in comprehending our systems, which are characterized by a level of complexity that has been buried beneath years of development and adaptation. During meetings, he would look right past me and proclaim that we need to future-proof our organization. A consultant by the name of Jason Phillips was brought in by him. This was 6 months ago. An expensive outfit, a solid handshake, and a visible display of his Stanford degree on his LinkedIn profile. Every time I walked by, they would be huddled, together in conference rooms whispering to one another. Around 3 months ago, I became aware of a covert modification being made to my access permissions. Absolutely nothing out of the ordinary, simply some minor adjustments to regulatory controls. Although I had the opportunity to protest, I chose to observe and document instead. This past evening, while we were sitting on the porch, Andrea remarked that you appear to be distracted. Are things going well at the workplace? My beer was being sipped as I nodded. Nothing new or different. Nothing that I haven't seen before. But the adjustments had a distinct feel to them. When it came to meetings, I was being ignored. When it came to system improvements, I was no longer included in emails. The tasks that I would ordinarily be responsible for were delegated to younger members of the team. After then, I discovered it a memo that pertained to the modernization initiatives of the entire organization and had never been communicated to me. It proposed a comprehensive reorganization of the Information Technology Department while Jason Phillips was serving as, the new chief. It wasn't even on the organizational chart that my position was listed. On that same day, I came upon another piece of information. In the course of performing a routine security check, which is one of those background activities that no one else bothers with anymore, I became aware of some peculiar patterns in our account management software. Transfers on a regular basis to a vendor that I was unfamiliar with, a group called Apex Solutions. In a short amount of time, a search revealed that it had been registered with a company address that went to a UPS store just the previous year. The permitted payments had begun on a modest scale, but were gradually increasing on a monthly basis. I did not make any commentary. Rather, I simply made a note of it, duplicated the records, and continued to observe. There are times when the man who is shy and sits in the corner sees everything exactly because everyone else believes that he does not see anything. In the morning following my termination, I found myself sitting in my home office and staring at my personal laptop. I was not awoken by any alarm. No commuters were waiting. All that was left was quiet and the weight of what had taken place. Coffee was given to me by Andrea, who positioned it next to me without making a sound. After 19 years of marriage, she was able to recognize when I required some distance. At some point, she announced, "I'm going to go to the store. What do you require?" I gave a slight shake of my head. Immediately following her departure, I proceeded to unlock the drawer at the bottom of my desk and retrieved a flash drive. I kept a number of them safe and secure. The removal of data was severely prohibited under the company's policy. On the other hand, I was clear about the necessity of off-site backups all those years ago, when the legal team needed an audit system for tracking potential dangers from within organizations. After they had given their approval, they soon forgot about it. Then I started going through the files after I had plugged it in. Letters sent within the company. It was inappropriate for me to have access to the meeting minutes, records pertaining to finances that regular employees would never be exposed to. That was the case. Every single payment that has ever been made to Apex Solutions Group. 18 months worth of about $1.8 million in total. The line of approval led directly to our Chief Financial Officer, Brian Wilcox. From there, I looked more, comparing and contrasting different dates and data until I found the pattern. In a perfect alignment, the payments coincided with a series of software license renewals for systems that were utilized across the whole organization. Nevertheless, the amounts were exaggerated. Sometimes by 15%, sometimes by 20%. A size that does not immediately cause alarm to be raised, sizable enough to cause a total. I discovered that Apex Solutions Group had a company registration that I could access. It was Thomas Wilcox who was identified as the owner. I performed a speedy search on social media and it verified my suspicions. Another brother-in-law of Brian. Through the use of a phony markup on real expenditures, they were stealing money from the company. The sensation of something shifting within me prompted me to recline back in my chair. This is not quite anger, something with a lower temperature. It is more concentrated. Over the course of 17 years, I had secured data, fixed systems, and solved problems. It had been me who was dependable, a constant presence that never caused any waves to be created. In addition, they dumped me as if I were obsolete gear. An alert rang on my phone, and it was a text message from Stephen, a young analyst whom I had been mentoring for the past 2 years. Apologies for the previous day. What they did was complete and utter nonsense. Already, Phillips is moving into the office that you no longer use. There was no response from me as I put the phone down. Every component is currently in place. Prior to anyone being able to piece together their plan, Daniel and the CFO required that I be removed from the picture. More than likely, they believed that the proof would vanish along with me, a notion that I was only an elderly tech man who was not familiar with contemporary financial concepts. My email was opened, and I immediately started writing a message to be sent to the board of directors. Next, the person halted, with their finger lingering over the submit button. Too forthright. Overly simple to disregard like the vehement complaints of a former worker who was terminated. I required some exertion. To be precise, a means of bringing to light the fraudulent activity that could not be concealed or disregarded. Following the deletion of the manuscript, I began making preparations. The following day was Wednesday. Today is the day of the board meeting. The financials would be presented on a quarterly basis. There would be approval for bonuses. The timing was perfect. I shut down the laptop and made my way to the window of the living room, where I stood and gazed out at the neighborhood where we had created our lives and brought up our children. I grinned for the very first time since the days before yesterday. While I was sitting in my car on Wednesday morning, I was observing the employees of Meridian as they entered the revolving doors of the headquarters, which is located across the street. My laptop, which was logged into an email account that I had created for the purpose of security testing many years ago, was located in the passenger seat. one that seemed to originate from a company domain that was only accessible within the company, but was not recorded in the primary directory. I made my initial move at precisely 9:15 in the morning. An email to Daniel with the subject line, Financial Irregularities, a request for an urgent review, and a brief overview of what I discovered in relation to the Apex payments. Although I gave just the right amount of information to make it plausible, I did not mention the relationship to my brother-in-law. If Daniel was involved, he would be taken aback. Assuming he wasn't, he would look into it. In either case, I would acquire new knowledge. My phone started ringing around 9:45. The number of Daniel. The call was left on my voicemail. His communication was succinct. Please, Jake, we need to talk about your email as soon as possible. Please give me a call back. It wasn't me. Rather than that, I went to a coffee shop where I put up my laptop and waited there. And another email arrived at 10:30 o'clock. This one comes from Vanessa, who works in human resources. We are writing to inform you, Mr. Wilson, that we have received contact from you that is disturbing and may violate the terms of your separation agreement. Please refrain from communicating with any employees of Meridian and keep in mind that you have obligations regarding confidentiality. Any such correspondence could result in legal action being taken. That is the way that they were playing the game. Hurt someone. Get rid of it. Isolate yourself. Neither of the separation agreements had been signed by me. My safe deposit box was accessible to me at midday, so I drove to my bank and accessed it. There was still another backup inside. Although it was older, it contained vital information that I had neglected to include on my regular travels. A number of the files contained the original security protocols that I had established. These protocols included documentation of who had access to which systems and when their settings were altered. According to these documents, 28 months ago, exactly around the time that the Apex payment started, Brian Wilcox had personally sought enhanced access to the financial approval processes. When I got back to my house, I saw 3 more missed calls. Currently, Jason Phillips is joining Daniel and Vanessa. I was taken aback by how quickly he became involved in the situation. It's fascinating. A message from Steven that was categorized as urgent was waiting for me when I accessed my personal email. It has been reported that you, Jake, wrote a bizarre email regarding fraudulent financial activity. Phillips convened a meeting for urgent proceedings. Everybody is communicating. They are restricting your access to everything, even historical information that is necessary for us to perform our jobs. How are things going? What a poor child, caught in the crossfire of the conflict. I have sent a brief response. Stephen, be careful not to become engaged. Simply observe. My house phone rang around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I have not used this number for business purposes in many years. As soon as I picked up, I remained silent. Who is Jake? Your name is Brian Wilcox. The tone of his voice was calm and collected. We need to have a conversation about your worries. It seems to me that there has been a misunderstanding. What do you call it, if I may ask? I inquired about it. Take a look at it. Transitional periods are often challenging. You can go through the appropriate procedures if you have questions regarding the company's finances. Do you like the board? I was the one who interrupted. Therefore, be quiet. It is not necessary for the board to be overly concerned with operational particulars. Why don't we call each other tomorrow? Nothing but you and I. I am able to make this obvious. I apologized, but I need to be busy tomorrow. In addition, I believe that the board might possibly have a significant amount of interest in Apex Solutions Group and the brother-in-law of yours. I was able to deduce everything from the sudden intake of air. The last thing he said was, "You are making a very serious mistake. Let's put this matter to rest. Severance that is generous. There are references. Anything that you require." I hung up the phone after saying goodbye to Brian. Within the span of 10 minutes, Vanessa sent another email. My severance compensation had suddenly increased by a factor of 2, and it was accompanied by an agreement that demanded that I maintain strict confidentiality with regard to all corporate matters. They were frantically trying to get things done. However, they continued to believe that they were dealing with a straightforward attempt at extortion. Nobody was aware of what was going to happen. In the morning of Thursday, clarity and confirmation became available. Throughout the night, I had spent my time going over years' worth of data and connecting the dots that I had previously missed. There were other inventive accounting projects that Brian had worked on before the Apex plan. Another pattern began to emerge 3 years ago, not long after he was appointed Chief Financial Officer. Lakeside Business Solutions is the company that will be receiving the consulting fees. Same game, but with a different name. The invoices were inflated for services that were either partially or never provided. At Lakeside, I was able to track down the registration. Patricia Wilcox, Brian's wife, was the direct result of this one. It would appear that the woman was the chief executive officer of a company that did not have a website, did not have any workers, and had a virtual office location. My investigation into the email archives yielded the most significant discovery, however. Indeed, Daniel had not only been aware of these plans, but he had also assisted in making them possible. As a result of this, his department was given budget increases while other departments were forced to suffer cuts. He had been brought in specifically because the former director had begun to inquire about the expenditures that were being made for information technology. It was even possible to connect Jason Phillips, an unconventional method that sidestepped the typical procurement procedures was utilized in order to secure the services of his consultancy firm. It wasn't his job to modernize information technology. Rather, it was to get rid of the one individual who could possibly spot the trends. In the finances, with its understated elegance, the plan was a masterpiece. Create merchants who appear to be legitimate, give your approval to payments that are inflated, and then divide the difference. As a result of the fact that legitimate services were being delivered simply at marked-up rates, auditors who were searching for entirely bogus charges would fail to notice it. They were able to siphon roughly $4.3 million over the course of 3 years. I compiled everything into a detailed report that has been compiled. There are spreadsheets that illustrate the pattern of increases. These are the business registrations that connect the companies to Brian's family. Email exchanges demonstrating Daniel's engagement and knowledge of the situation. I then did something that they would not have anticipated. Robert Chen, a board member with whom I had collaborated on a security implementation many years ago, was the person I reached out to. Although he was now in a semi-retired state, he continued to present at quarterly meetings. When he answered the phone on the second ring, he said, "Jake Wilson, for a very long time. You have left Meridian, I heard." I replied that it was not by choice. "Please allow me 15 minutes of your time, Robert. Yes, it is essential, therefore be quiet. It is because of this that Brian and Daniel have been huddled together, appearing to be under a lot of stress. Yesterday, the board meeting was a contentious affair. No doubt." He laughed out loud. "Assumed that you were aware of the location where the bodies were buried. Where are we able to get together?" We sat in a park 3 miles away from the headquarters when we arrived an hour later. I presented him with a flash drive and a sealed envelope that had a printed summary of the information. That is the entirety of what I stated: the dates, the quantities, and the links. It is not my intention to hunt for a new employment. I'm not aiming for financial gain. All I want is for the appropriate individuals to be aware of this. Robert looked at me a lot. "Why do you go to me?" "Owing to the fact that you frequently read audit reports. I have observed you in several meetings. You pose inquiries to me." Slowly, he gave a nod. "There is an urgent meeting of the board scheduled for tomorrow. Finance committee review. Right at the right moment." While he was pocketing the envelope, he murmured, "Jake, there will be severe repercussions in the event that this turns out to be true. Yes, I am banking on it." During the time that I was walking back to my car, my phone rang with a text message from Andrea. Someone by the name of Jason Phillips stopped by the residence in an attempt to locate you, declared that it was of the utmost importance. I let him know that you were away. They had reached a point of desperation. That's good. In the afternoon of that day, I was presented with job offers from 2 different companies that were in competition with one another, both for positions vastly superior to the one I was previously in. Both of these programs provide significant signing incentives. The news of my unexpected availability had spread throughout the community. I choose to disregard them for the time being. The purpose of this was not to look for another employment. In order to complete what they had begun, it was necessary. The previous evening, using credentials that ought to have been revoked but were not canceled. "Jason, your transfer to information technology was sloppy. A final attempt was made by me to access the email server of the company. I also planned for a message to be sent to each and every member of the board at 8 in the morning. Tomorrow is the day. A couple of goodies are waiting for your approval. Take a look at this. Kindly find attached my complete report." The morning of Friday revealed a clear and brilliant sky. Having a cup of coffee in my hand, I sat on my porch and watched the neighborhood wake up. There is no alarm clock. There is no commute. Only waiting here. At precisely 8 o'clock in the morning, the payload of my scheduled email was delivered to the members of the board. At 8:17, my phone started to ring. Numbers that I was not familiar with. Likely assistants of board members frantically trying to get in touch with me. Each one of them was sent to the voicemail. The meeting of the Emergency Finance Committee would start at 9 o'clock in the morning. A copy of my documentation would be in the possession of Robert Chen at that time, observing the responses as my email was found and debated by different people. Steve sent a text message at 9:32. "There is a police presence here. The interrogation of Wilcox and Daniel is taking place in conference rooms." Phillips looked bad and ill. "That is what you did." I did not give a response. I was completely correct in my assumption that the wheels would turn. Meridian's general counsel called at 10 o'clock in the morning. I responded to this question in contrast to the others. "Greetings, Mr. Wilson. This is Patricia Graves on behalf of legal. It is imperative that you come in right away so that we can discuss the information that you have submitted to the board. It is possible to reach me by phone," I responded. "This really calls for a conversation to take place in person." "Indeed. It does not," I remarked in a composed manner. "That report contains all that I am aware of. Every single thing that I possess is already backed up in a number of different safe places. Additional copies are sent to the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Internal Revenue Service, and 3 different news outlets in the event that something happens to me or my family. There is no sound. In the end, she addressed Mr. Wilson with a tone that was measured and deliberate. The board is paying a great deal of attention to this matter. It has already been decided to place a number of executives on administrative leave while they conduct an inquiry. Your assistance would be much appreciated by them. I've been very cooperative by supplying all of the necessary documentation. What I did is finished. I traveled to a diner that was 20 miles outside of Columbus after she hung up the phone. No sense can be easily discovered in the present day. News started breaking on local company websites while lunch was being served. The executives of Meridian Technologies are currently being investigated for possible financial wrongdoing. So far, there are no names, but that will change. It was 2 o'clock when Robert Chen called. What he said without any preamble was that it was a bloodbath. We approached Brian with your evidence, and he eventually admitted his guilt, seeking to reach a compromise. That Daniel was the one who put pressure on him. Everything is being denied by Daniel, which is Phillips, he asserts, that he was nothing more than a consultant who was completely ignorant of financial problems. The board does not believe it. Until additional inquiry is conducted, we have suspended all 3 of them. What about the money? The arrival of forensic accountants is scheduled on Monday. Over the course of 3 years, preliminary estimates indicate that at least $4.5 million was diverted, perhaps even more. I gave myself a slight nod. That was very close. After that, Robert said, "The board would like to speak with you. With regard to returning, not only to the role you held before, a new position for the Chief Security Officer is going to be created, delivering a report to the board, specifically." Even though I had anticipated the prospect of this happening, I was nevertheless taken aback by it. So I answered, "I'll give it some thought." I divulged all of my information to Andrea that evening. She did not interrupt while she was listening, and then she inquired, "What are you interested in doing?" Excellent question. All of the vengeance parts were finished. They were the ones who had pushed me out, and now they were being pushed out themselves. Probably going to be charged with a crime. In a chilly and precise manner, justice had been served. On the other hand, going back to Meridian meant going back into the same organization that had fired me after I had served there for 17 years. Would it be possible for me to accomplish that? Am I able to do it? I ultimately said, I need some time to make a decision. In the later hours of that day, I opened my laptop for the very last time and wrote a single note on my LinkedIn profile, which had been inactive for quite some time. Keep your bridges intact at all times. What you should do is simply allow them to fall under the weight of their own avarice. In a matter of minutes, former co-workers started getting in touch with me. Word was getting out there. The individual who worked for Quiet Systems had successfully eliminated 3 executives without using his voice. When Monday arrived, everyone would have a clear understanding of who they had misjudged. When I arrived at Meridian's headquarters, on Monday morning, I was wearing a suit that I hadn't worn in years. The security guard did a quick double-take before printing a visiting ID for me within a short amount of time. It was with a newfound regard that he extended a warm welcome to Mr. Wilson. The travel in the elevator to the executive floor was completely silent. There had never been a time when I needed to go to this level before. My presence in the boardroom was now anticipated. Over a table that had been polished, 10 members of the board sat. It was a little nod from Robert Chen as I entered the room. Chapter Interim Chief Executive Officer, who had previously served as Chief Operating Officer, was uneasy. She started off by saying, "Mr. Wilson, I am grateful that you have come. What you have brought to light is a situation that has never been seen before." I did not speak, however. She went on to say that the actual magnitude of the fraud appeared to be even more severe than what was previously stated. Nearly $5.2 million in funds that were misappropriated have been discovered by the forensic team. There is currently preparation of criminal charges. Despite this, I waited. A sigh of relief came from Robert. "Robert, Jake, the board of directors has decided to establish a new executive position with a unanimous vote, the Chief Information Security Officer position. This position has full executive privileges and reports directly to the board of directors. It is our intention to extend the role to you." My folder was placed on the table by me. "You will find my terms and conditions within, I told you. It is non-negotiable." It was opened by the CEO, who rapidly scanned it. Her brows became uplifted. Complete authority to conduct audits across all departments. Budget that is independent. The ability to veto choices about financial technology. I gave a single nod. She stated that this is not typical. I responded by saying that it was the theft of $5.2 million. This transpired due to the fact that no one was watching. Someone is going to be now. There was complete silence in the room. As I stood there, I told you that you have until noon. There are other opportunities available to me. Robert inquired as I was departing from the room. Jake, have you been planning from the beginning? When I got to the door, I halted. When I was 17 years old, I had no intention of being fired. From that point on, everything that followed was simply me doing what I've always done. The process of locating weaknesses in the system and putting suitable security measures into place. They called at 11:47 o'clock. Every stipulation had been approved by them. After waiting for half a year, I finally found myself sitting in my new corner office, going over the security procedures for the forthcoming quarter. As a daily reminder of how much had changed, the view, which overlooked the skyline of Columbus, was breathtaking. A guilty plea had been entered by Brian Wilcox to multiple counts of fraud. It was agreed that he would receive a reduced sentence in exchange for his assistance. The significance has not diminished. The allegations were being contested by Daniel, who maintained that he was unaware of the scheme despite the evidence surrounding it. In spite of the fact that he had fled to Brazil, Jason Phillips was being extradited. After some time, the money was retrieved, to a large extent anyway. As a result, the organization was able to avoid suffering significant financial damage. I was now in charge of my previous team, and I had promoted Stephen to the position of managing day-to-day operations. He was a child with potential, simply needed someone to have a look at it. The sound of someone knocking on my door caught my attention. As she stood there, Andrea wore a grin. Prepared to eat lunch? She inquired about it. Grabbing my jacket, I nodded in agreement. While we were walking through the information technology department, there was a small pause in the conversations. Respect, not fear, is the motivation. Such individuals were aware of what had taken place, was aware that I had the ability to bring the company to its knees rather than save it. Within the elevator, Andrea gave my hand a gentle squeeze. Content? I put some thought into the question. I had experienced a decrease in the fury that had been driving me during the initial few days after I was dismissed. The only thing that remained was not one of delight. This is more akin to contentment. The completion of. I said that I was okay. While we were walking to a restaurant in the vicinity, the October sun warmed our faces as we were outside. A message from Robert Chen was received on my phone, which buzzed. Increase in your security budget was approved by the board. The vote was unanimous. I let forth a little smile. There will be no debates or inquiries. Just put your faith in it. Andrea observed the emotion on my face. What exactly is it? Nothing, I said, as I reinserted the phone into my pocket at the same time. Just pondering the concept of bridges. There are some that give way under their own weight. After they have been healed, some of them become even more powerful than they were before. In this instance, I had constructed it correctly.